good afternoon, everyone. I guess we can start the event right now. And meanwhile, people will be joining us. So, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to one of our weekly events. Today, we are having a really special guest and an accomplished entrepreneur, someone who has started his journey in startup at the age of 18 years while continuing his education. He launched his first product and which made him a financially independent teenager. Then again at age of 20, he co-founded another company and exited it after running 7 successful years. Again at age of 24, he started India's first PVN hosting platform. All these events led to him founding his current startup, PitchGround, which is valued at 20 million US dollars as of 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Udit Goenka. Sir, it is our honor to have you with us here today.
Oh, thank you so much, Suvacho, for having me over here. Thank you so much for the invite.
And just like what I'm glad right now is my parents were not here when I was giving this introduction. Otherwise, like they would have felt like I was quite useless eventually, because when someone of my age has done this much and there here am I, like my accomplishments, like our accomplishments are seriously negligible in front of what in front of yours, and that's why it's so great to talk with people like you who are that much influential. We get to learn so much from such like influential figures. It's our honor to have you here today, sir.
Thank you so much. And I think Shubhanshu, like we should never compare, because everyone has gone through a different journey. Everyone is in a unique journey, and everyone has really worked hard. Sometimes what happens is, some people their time comes a little early. Some people the time comes a little late because I firmly believe in when it's the right time, things happen for people, right? So while I've been working on things, PitchGround apparently has is one of my most successful projects so far, right? But then again, it happened when I'm at the age of like 31, right? So it's all about like just continuing on your journey, working very hard, and not compromising on your ethics at any point of stage, and just staying focused and just keep on working on things, I would say.
And so before we begin, just a small information for all our viewers who are present here. Today we'll be launching something really cool, so stay tuned with us and be active in the community to avail certain great perks that we are going to offer soon. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the hashtag event chat section, and do also leave your review at the event review section. So I guess without a further ado, we shall dig into the question. So since my first question for you is like, since your profile says that you have bootstrapped your company, and there is this one thing which is going in these the young entrepreneurs these days, that they all want to bootstrap their businesses. So anything important for them that like because it's business is something you learn out of experience, like doing it for experience. So would you love to share something, some important aspects for bootstrapping your own business?
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the most important aspect about bootstrapping is ensuring that you have actually built your audience prior to launching your products and services. What generally happens is people end up going and launching their products so quickly, so soon, that they end up struggling with distribution. And I always keep telling everyone that the money is not into creation, the money is in distribution. There are millions of creators out there, but the ones that are very successful are the ones who have cracked down on the distribution channel. Now, this can be with regards to your content, this can be with regards to your services or your products. It's purely on that distribution. So, my high recommendation would be that, let's say if you are planning a startup and you think, okay, you have a good idea about it, and before executing that idea, make sure that you spend 6 months building up an audience for that particular niche product. So if you see, I am building PitchGround and FirstSales.io both in public. Now, FirstSales.io is barely a 2 month old project. So I think a lot of people can sort of relate to it. And the way I did things was that I spent about 6 months pre-marketing it. I did not even have the product. I was just pre-marketing the heck out of it. Right? I did not charge anyone anything, but I just wanted to see what people would react to, what their problem statements were. Because when you're trying to build a solution, and if someone has a problem, they would come and keep telling you, यार मेरे को भी ये प्रॉब्लम है यार कितने मेरे को just solve my problem, I'll give you the money, right? They'll come up and say that to you because they're frustrated with the existing solutions in the market. So this sort of gives you a bit of validation on your idea. And similarly, there are many such people out there. And this is where we have to figure out the right ICP. That is the most important part for any entrepreneur or any startup out there, is focus on a vertical ICP approach. In fact, I'm going to be releasing a video on ICP in the next couple of days. So this is where the problem comes in for a lot of startups is they think the whole world is their customer and they start approaching everyone, whoever can buy. Now, this is where they make the mistake. Focus on a very vertical approach. So, for an example, let's say that digital marketing agency is my potential ICP. Now, I'm not going to target that. I'm probably going to target social media agency on that digital marketing agency category as a subcategory. I'm going to first focus on them and then I'm going to start targeting them and I'm going to sell them first. Once I've nailed down on that vertical approach, I'll eventually open up a horizontal vertical growth then because it's still a vertical growth. And then eventually I'll start building things up. So this is very important for anyone who is bootstrapping to understand your ICP and ensure that you focus on ICP that can be closed very quickly because you will be building up your case studies and use cases around it. So that's the most important part about bootstrapping.
That's a really great answer, sir. And one more thing, like many times when bootstrap startups, when they try to onboard some new team members, for example, they are trying to onboard a CTO or the much needed people on the team, sometimes people do not feel comfortable with the stakes situation. They are more into the cash. So how do you break such kind of situations?
Sorry, can you just repeat that last sentence?
Um, Basically, when we are trying to onboard those much needed people on our team, and sometimes we tend to offer them like stakes in exchange of their services, but at times they look for cash more. So how to break such situations? How to overcome such situations? Like they are looking for cash and we are offering them sort of stakes. So how do you tackle such situations?
So I think this will purely come down to how strong your vision is, how strong of a technical founder you are. When I say technical, I'm not talking about coding. I'm talking about understanding your industry technically. How strong you are, your vision, and how you can really sort of execute it. It will purely come down to all of these things because ultimately, when you're building your founding team, it's all about the ability to sell a vision. So a CEO typically has to be a very good salesperson because he has to sell to everyone, to customers, to his team, to investors, whoever it is, right? You have to sort of be a good salesperson. For that, you have to have a good storytelling skill that you have to develop. And this can be developed by anyone, right? This is not like some special talent that someone has. Anyone can develop the skills. So you have to do that because ultimately people who are gonna join your founding team is not gonna just join because of the money or the equity. They are going to join because you were able to sell them your story. So you have to work on that story. If you tell them, oh my God, we're gonna build a multi-billion-dollar business, that's something that everyone says, right? But if you tell them that, hey, this is the problem that I faced and I'm building a solution around it because I know this is where a lot of people are suffering from. Now what I'm doing is I'm building a story. So that storyline is very important. It's very critical to go ahead with and start working on things.
If you allow me, I would love to know your story regarding your third startup, like the PNB one, which you have mentioned in your LinkedIn profile. It failed and you got to learn a lot out of it. So could you please tell us what were your learnings?
So actually, that was a very successful project. It was a third one, which was known as Funnel Bake. It's quite an interesting story, actually. So while I was building up, while I built up my second startup, which was CoPPN, a private blog network, it was such a sub niche category that I ended up deciding to sell it. So that's how I made my second exit. But that's when I was looking for what to do next, and I started building up on my third project, which was known as Funnel Bake, and that project failed very miserably. I ended up losing about $200,000. I ended up losing uh, my entire team. A lot of like every single decision that you can think of going wrong has gone wrong. Everything, right from the hiring to management to recruitment to the product to customers being angry, everything went down the drain for me. And after that project, I was in actually a very heavy depression for about 9 months of time. It was a very difficult period for me to come out of it. And that's when I decided that I want to give myself a closure, that I need to move on, right? You cannot just sit down and think about it for the rest of your life. You have to move on at one stage. But when it comes to moving on, it's very important for humans to have a closure. That's how our human brains are hardwired and designed. So in this case, it's sort of very important that you take that sort of a decision out there. And I decided to have that closure. And when I started finding out why my startup failed, I landed on an article by Lighter Capital that said about 92% of the SaaS companies fail within the first 3 years. And that industry is apparently $200 billion industry. So that means $200 billion every 3 years goes down the drain. And that's when I decided, hey, why don't I end up building PitchGround, which is a SaaS marketplace, because I cannot help companies individually, but I can help companies in masses if I take an approach of marketplace. So that's how I built PitchGround. That's how PitchGround was born. That's how PitchGround was started with, and that's how the entire journey of PitchGround began. But then again, whenever you're an entrepreneur, you always have some unfinished business. So I had that unfinished business with Funnelbake. So when I told my story of Funnelbake to my current CTO and co-founder Lucas, he was like, "We're gonna rebuild it, right? When the right time comes, we're gonna rebuild it." And that's how First Sales was reborn, resaturated again, where he ended up rebuilding the entire product from the start of this year, and now we have one of the most advanced solution for email outreaching on the entire internet. Right, in just 4 months, we built such an incredibly powerful solution that our customers are getting crazy results. They are literally filled up with so much leads that they don't know what to do with it now, right? So that's, sometimes there's a circle of evolution that we say, right? Everything is a circle, nothing is a straight line when it comes to life. So this is that circle that got completed, that my failure led me to build a $20 million business, and that $20 million business led me to build a fantastic team. Again, this was all the mistakes that I made in my last startup. And then that led me to rebuild Funnelbake as First Sales and then relaunch. Now, both of these are going fantastically well, growing very well. Our user base is growing very well. So that's a journey of evolution, I would say. So sometimes I would say that life throws a lot of lemon at you, right? Now it's up to you whether you want to dodge it or whether you want to end up making a lemonade and sell it, right? So it's completely up to you how you want to do things. But everything happens in life for a purpose. It's for a reason. When you start connecting the dots as you move forward, as Steve Jobs always says, that connect the dot backwards, not forward. So when you start connecting the dots from backward, you will start realizing that things are meant to happen in a certain way for you. You just got to believe in what you're doing. You just got to keep moving forward if you're stuck in your life. And as long as you're doing that, you will see progress.
That's a really great answer, and it was really inspiring story. Like bouncing back in life is one of the most important factor. And like being a student, like while I was preparing for my joint entrance, like I faced that same thing. Like I cracked it once, I couldn't clear advance, and then I was totally down the drain. Then my school time friend and I decided to like, no, it's not what we were meant to do. We are meant to bring some changes, and that's why we started this, like to help all the youngsters and all those people who wish to start something. That's why we came up with the idea of Start Now, and we are working towards it. And coming to my next question, as you have mentioned in your previous answer, that there were many, one of the reasons, one of the failures that you noticed was like hiring. So screening potential candidates for the team, as they are like, when we startup basically requires a lot of people to work for them. You can't, but basically you cannot do most of the work on your own. So what was the thing that went wrong in actually hiring those people? Like, was the screening of the application was wrong, or actually you were looking for a different set, you end up going with a different set of people? Like for example, you are looking for people who are actually into the idea, but then you thought, okay, this guy is more skilled, but he definitely may not be that into our idea, but he can work for us. Like, where exactly the hiring part?
So I think one of the biggest mistake that I made during that particular startup because I had built a team of almost 50 people without a product, by the way. So one of the biggest mistake I would say was the lack of character judgment that I made over there. Because I was doing majority of the hiring. So this was the very first time that I had built a big team. So prior to that, in the other startups, right, my team was very small to a point where it was 2 people, 5 people team, just working on things. Very lean startup basically. But this time it was very different, and that's when I realized a few mistakes that I made. First, like never hire quick, never, right? Go slow, go lean in terms of hiring. And even for funded companies, just because you have raised fund, don't go from 50 to 150 in a month, because it takes time for people to adopt and it takes time to find the right people as well. So that's the first mistake that I made. I hired too quickly. Second biggest mistake that I made was I even though I knew that they're not performing, I still kept them. I was in a hope that they would keep getting better and better, and that doesn't happen. And this is when I saw one of the video of Gary Vee where he said that you gotta hire fast and fire fast. That's how businesses really work. It's brutal, but that's the way of doing business because there's a cost, and today human resources are the biggest cost for any company out there. It's not anything else, it's the human resources. So you have to make sure that you fire quickly. And then again, I think the biggest mistake that I made was the lack of character judgment, because you can teach people skill, but you cannot teach people ethics. You cannot teach people uh, the way of doing things. You cannot do that, right? So that was sort of the biggest concern, and that's what I learned was making sure that now that when we hire people, we look for character, and if we don't see that character in a months of time, we let that person go. And we are very upfront as well, by the way. So this is not like something that we hire them and right away we fire them, right? That's not something that when we do the hiring process, we are very clear with them. Look, if we don't see the performance in a month of time, we're gonna let you go. Those days are gone when someone will take 6 months to adapt to work. Those days are gone, right? You're looking for high pay packages, so that also means that company has high expectations as well. And one of the expectation is you need to start delivering results from your first month and not from your 6th month, right? Because you're not working for free for those 6 months. So that's especially when it comes to startups, because the startups are actually lean. The processes are very streamlined at the same time. So those were some of the mistakes that I made earlier, but now I make sure of not repeating that mistake. And again, we're very upfront with people that we are hiring. We let them know, look, this is how we operate. So if you still want to work with us, more than happy to give it a try for a month or two.
And another question I had, like, whom would you recommend to go for a funding and for bootstrapping? Like, is there any specific type of people you believe, like these set of people with this kind of mentality should follow this road, whereas this set of people should follow this road? Because, see, startups are quite a risky venture. Eventually, we both can agree. Failure and success can be determined not only on the, it can be basis of luck and our hard work. See, these two things go hand in hand. If it was meant to be, then it will be actually, like, no matter how much work I put into it, if it was not meant to be, it won't just happen. So that's why, like, whom would you recommend to actually go for funding, and whom would you recommend to go for a bootstrapping their own business?
Look, now it comes down to what your goals really are. So, for example, um, if you are someone who is looking to grow a company to a decent size and then keep on exiting, then don't raise capital, right? Because you would be raising capital at a valuation of potential exit point. That means you might end up making money, but your investors won't, and you will burn your bridges there. So that's one thing, right? So there is nothing wrong. I know a lot of SaaS founders that builds a business of 50K in MRR, 30K in MRR, and they end up selling their company for $1.2 million, $1.3 million, right? Because 50K MRR is about 600K. So they end up getting 2x of that ARR amount. So they end up making about $1.2 million and very happy. So I know a lot of founders who build such projects once a year. They grow it for the entire year, and then they end up selling in about a year and a half, and they end up making over $1 million as a cash every year. Now that's one thing. You cannot do that when you're raising capital, right? So now that's one approach. The second is if you're looking to bootstrap, you need to understand that this is a long term goal. This is a long term vision, and it's not going to happen overnight. It might take you 15 years to become a unicorn, or maybe 20 years to become a unicorn. And then from that stage, your journey would be a lot faster. So you look at, for example, Zerodha, right? We talk a lot about them. They started back in 2009 and 10. No one talks about that. So it's been what, like 10 to 11 years of their journey before they start getting noticed. People are talking about Zoho now. It started in 1998. So they started back in 1998. So you have to again understand that when you're bootstrapping, you have a very different long-term vision. And if you don't have that long-term vision, and if you're looking for that building, growing, and exiting strategies, then you cannot raise capital at that stage. Especially with this, unless until you are able to grow a lot faster and you're able to exit at least 10x of the amount that your investors have paid for at the valuation. So you have to also ensure that. Now, on what conditions you need to raise capital, right? So I'm also an angel investor in 21 companies so far. So one of the things that I've observed is that you should do it if you are sort of you have found a product market fit. The problem right now with a lot of companies in India is they try to raise capital at the pre-revenue stage or at in such an early stage that they end up diluting so much capital, sorry, so much equity that they end up becoming an employee in their own company, right? So, for example, we see all of these Shark Tank founders, for an example. Most of them don't own more than 5 or 8%, more than 10% equity. I think only 1% owns less than 10%, but majority of them owns less than that, right? I think only Aman Gupta owns like 27% because they raised quite a late. They didn't raise during the initial stages. So now, but then I also have a huge respect for founder of Noise. They are 100% bootstrap. Recently met the CEO and co-founder last month in Bangalore, and they're doing a turnover of 1,500 crores bootstrapped. Imagine. So it's all about that patience, right? It's all about finding that product market fit. But some people want to raise capital to sort of accelerate that growth. But again, money doesn't guarantee growth. We have seen a lot of recent startups like Lido Learning and all of those shutting down after raising 20, 30, $40 million as well. So money cannot solve the problem. Ultimately, whatever you're doing, you have to understand that you have to figure out your PMF, which is product market fit, which means you understand your customers very well, they understand your product very well, and they're buying very quickly, and they're referring to others at the same time. So that's when you achieve a product market fit, and that's when the growth of any company really happens. So money and raising funds is not a solution. You have to find product market fit as a founder, regardless. Now, once you have done that, it's up to you whether you want to raise capital and scale on it very quickly, but then becoming an employee in your own company, because raising capital also means having a boss on top of you, right? You can no longer take any decisions. I'll tell you something interesting that I know some of the founders who owns 80-90% equity in their own company, yet they cannot decide how much salary that they can withdraw. They have to ask VC that, hey, can I withdraw more salary? If they say no, what's the point of you owning 90% of your company, right? You get into entrepreneurship for one reason: freedom. There is no other reason to become an entrepreneur. You want to take your own decisions, and you want to make sure that you make those decisions yourself, and that's why most people choose entrepreneurship. So if you're going to end up having a boss, why not work at a multinational company and have a chillful life instead of running a startup, having that pressure on top of you? Because ultimately, like I said, your equity is worth zero during the initial stages. Your equity starts getting valued at a lot higher point. So if you look at, for example, Sugar Cosmetics, right? The founder owns less than 5% equity, 4% equity. versus look at all the bootstrap companies, right? Even with a smaller valuation, the net worth is a lot higher. So that's why you have to understand and decide that what route you want to take. But ultimately, the freedom would be when you bootstrap. That's when you get the freedom to do whatever you want. And most importantly, the way startups are moving forward right now, you have to make fast decisions. The moment you start having VCs, those decisions will get delayed by a month, 2 month, 3 month. And if that gets delayed, you will still get the blamed because of all the reasons. Even if it's their fault, you will still get the blame as a founder. So this is why I would say, like, always bootstrap, never raise capital unless it's really required. And also at the same time, investors who invest, they generally invest for that crazy returns. But my purpose of investments has been for networking purely. So the way I do things is just a little different, and I've already like gotten 5x return even without making any single exit because I've been able to just tap into other people's network while funding them. So it's just that like every smart people do things something very differently. I do things very, very, very differently with a very different sort of a vision. Because if for me, like returns is in the form of networking, that's the most important part for me, and that's how like I work on what sort of companies to fund, and but more importantly, what company should be raising capital, and whether you should be going bootstrapped or not.
And that was a really great answer. And just one more thing in continuation of that, you have said that like it's quite obvious that we become entrepreneurs. People tend to become entrepreneurs just to get that freedom. And since you have been an angel investor, you have invested in more than 22 startups. What do you feel like? What is the point where these young startups actually fail? Like this is the point, like they are doing it wrong. You feel?
So I feel the biggest reason why so many startups are failing, and it's gonna fail even more miserably with recession coming in, especially the early stage founders and early 20 founders, is because they don't have experience, right? Having a degree from a very big university doesn't guarantee success, right? So for success, you need experience. Experience is what makes a major difference. So if you look at the stats from the global world, the average age of successful entrepreneurs and founders is 45, right? So now I'll give you some ideology. There are two things that are very critical for any startups. First is network to penetrate and sell, and second is network to recruit. But both of them requires network. Now, when you are working, when I would highly say get a job during your early 20s, right? Now, the reason behind that is when you are doing that job, first of all, you are learning and making mistake on other people's money, right? Life is too short to be like using your own money and making mistake and then regretting. So use other people's money, make mistakes. That's lesson number one. You will learn over there because when you start your startup, you will ensure you do not make those mistakes. The second very most important thing is you end up meeting a lot of your peers who could be your potential co-founders in the future, who could be working with you in the future, right? If you're building that startup right now, how are you going to build that network? Where are you going to go and look for your co-founders? Nowhere, right? You will end up going back to your college friends, and trust me, never sort of make them your co-founders. It's a matter of one wrong decision and that friendship falls apart, right? So never do that. A lot of people have done that. Some have been successful, but many have failed overall. So again, you build up that the network that's really very required, and more importantly, you gain the experience. And lastly, when you work and you get a job during your entire 20s, you also get high paying packages, salaries, and everything that can help you when you start your journey. That you might not to even need to raise the seed capital because whatever that money was, you already have that money sitting in your bank. So this means that you can start bootstrapping and continue bootstrapping your journey. And this is where the young generation is making so many mistakes by chasing this entire startup hype that media is making right now. Don't fall into that trap. I have given a clear ideology of I made this mistake myself, right? By not doing a job. I wish the startup culture existed about 10 years ago because I would have never started my startups during that stage because I've made a lot of mistakes. I've burned a lot of money by making those mistakes. The only challenge was during 10 years ago, the kind of technological startups that exist today did not exist 10 years ago. That's the only problem. You see a startup in every single category today. That wasn't the case about 10 years ago, right? So the young people, the upcoming generation has such a huge advantage today of being in any sort of field and network that they want. So my recommendation is from your 20 to 23, work for a startup where it's an early stage startup and they're struggling with funds. The reason behind that is the founders are going to be the most creative. Make sure that the founders are not 20 as well, right? The founders are in their 30s who are starting out. So when you do that, you will see that the experience would kick in. The founder will try to optimize every bit of their businesses, right? You look, when you're running machines, you have to oil the machines constantly to optimize and get better productivity. Same is the case with your business. You have to optimize every bit of your businesses, and that's something that you will learn from that particular founder. Once you have crossed 23, now quit that and join another startup that's a funded startup. Now, when you do that, you will see the operation of growth, how they pour the money in, how they burn the money so that you can learn and avoid burning the money the same way, right? Those 2 years would be very critical for you. From your 26 to 28 or 30, join a corporate, a profitable corporate like HUL, Reliance, or it can be any other big Tata, any other Tata companies, right? Now, what's going to happen over there is you're going to build corporate networks. That is where the money is. It's the top level corporate that pays crazy amount of money, right? So you'll build that corporate networks. You'll have a nice paying salary on top of that. So by the time you turn 30, you'll probably end up having around 5 to 7 CR in your bank account. That's pretty much the seed capital that people are raising today, right? And then in your 30s, you would have gone through so much of things that you would actually understand, okay, I found a problem because I've worked in the industry for 10 years. And that is exactly when you quit and start your startup, or start your startup as a side hustle on the side, see how it goes, right? Validate your idea. And if it kicks off, quit your job and then start your journey. This is something that I recommend to every single person in their 20s. I wish I would have gone through this journey, but then again, I didn't have that option. So, but anyone who's out there in their 20s, this is what you do. And trust me, you will make the least fuck ups. You will not burn your money when you have the money sitting in your bank, and you will be able to optimize and grow that money very, very quickly. You might even take that 7 CR in your bank account to 30, 40 CR in just what 3, 4 years at that stage. And that's how you do things. Don't rush into it. You have your entire life, right? So when you have your entire life in front of you, why do you want to rush? That's the problem with the current media, that they're rushing and hyping so much that today a 17-year-old kid wants to start a startup. I have seen 14-year-old kids trying to be very desperate. यार मेरे को भी स्टार्टअप स्टार्ट करना है, मेरे को भी $1 million कमाना है. आप पहले पढ़ाई कर लो पूरी, ठीक है? पढ़ाई करने के बाद थोड़ा सा एक्सपीरियंस ले लो. You have your entire life out there to build things. First, spend your time learning, optimizing, and again making mistake on other people's money. That's when you will be more successful.
That was seriously an amazing answer. Like after listening to that answer, I'm questioning my own decision. Am I doing right now? Oh, and since being a college student, like we would love to know about your college journey as well. Like how was your college? What all activities you did
Yeah,
over there?
so yeah, 12th, I fucked up, right? I got into gaming, but that's what got me into designing and development. So I'm thankful for that. But at that point of stage, right, I really screwed up because I scored just 50% in my 12th because I opened my book just 2 weeks prior. ठीक है, so I whatever I could mug up and write the answers I did, because again I would play games all day long, and then that's what like intrigued me to get into designing, right? How those designs are done. That's how I started learning Photoshop. that's how I got into things. And then I started understanding how these games are built. So I started learning codes. I started developing applications then. So my life and journey started from there. So my in terms of like school college life, I was a very high level of introvert, right? Either developer or any developer you ask, he would prefer sitting in the corner of a room, just having a laptop or a PC with him and an internet, and he's sorted. So I was just used to be a very high introvert person. But then luckily after my 12th, I joined commerce. Being Marwadi, I took accounting and finance as my specialization because when I was already doing balance sheets and profit on loss statements and all of these things since I was a kid, because I would sit with my dad, and because my dad has his own business, so I would just sit and learn from it. So I did the same thing, started studying for the accounting, finance, and my exams 1 week prior, and this time I would secure 85%, right? So I was like, yeah, life is sorted, yahan pe chill hai. I could spend all the time on learning actually the things that I require. I would bunk a lot of classes. I would get kicked out of college a lot of times because I was bunking, but I would tell my teachers that, look, yeah, I'm actually studying and working on this. It's just that like what you guys are teaching doesn't excite me. I'm just studying for the sake of getting and completing my graduation. That's purely the reason why. So once I completed my graduations, I actually topped my cost accounting in Mumbai University. Again, just studying 2 weeks prior to the exam. And again, all of those numbers and everything. Like I'm very good. I was very good with maths and very good with accounts and even better with finance. So once that was done, I continued working, and then I got into Visit Chembur for my masters of computer application. Made the biggest mistake of my life once again because the quality of education was very shitty. I was already building applications, and they were teaching me how to write codes on PHP, how to open brackets, how to write semicolon, and how to compile. And I was like, यार अभी मैं क्या कर रहा हूँ यहाँ पे मतलब I'm already building big applications for companies, and I had already built a security plugin on WordPress. So मैं कर क्या रहा हूँ यहाँ पे? Somehow I finished that year and I quit, and I went to US. I started building my entire career over there. I found my co-founder in US, so that's when my first company was born in the US. So yeah, like in terms of college, I was a very heavy introvert person. It took me a lot of time to become an extrovert.
And there is also a question coming from the audience. Ankit has requested he wished to ask some questions. Ankit, please go ahead, unmute yourself. You can ask your question from sir.
Uh, Hello, sir. I just wanted to know. So, let's say if someone has just finished his college and going to the next phase of his life, say for example a job or a master's or anything. So, as someone like you who has done so much in his career, and like judging from experience, you would have definitely have quite a great deal of experience dealing with startups. How exactly would you ask uh, uh, give guidance to someone who is going into a venture like quite early in his life, especially not, I would say, after 30, but perhaps someone who has just entered into this phase of his life where he's starting his career. So what type of advice would you give? What should be the key indicators in any space you're working? So,
So your question is with regards to what should you be pursuing after your graduation? Is that your question?
no, sir, I would like to ask what should be the key indicators one should look towards when entering into a new phase of his life. Either it can be a startup or it can be a job or it can be anything. What should be the key indicators?
I would say again, like I said, in your early 20s, if you have completed, look for a passionate founder and work under that founder. Because the kind of learnings that your 20 should be about learning. Your 20 shouldn't be about making money, right? Because the more you learn in your 20s, the more money you will make in your 30s, and the faster you will be able to be financially free. So if you have completed that, what I would say is, first of all, list down what makes you curious. Because for me, curiosity is a step prior to passion. People say follow your passion. I say follow your curiosity. How would I know my passion if I don't even know that this industry exists? Right? For that to exist, you have to chase your curiosity. So write down, take up a notepad and write down. Don't use laptop or anything. Write down on a notepad That these are the things that makes me curious. Now it can be an FMCG sector, it can be health industry, it can be software industry, whatever your passion is, whatever your curiosity is, like I want to explore more about this industry, start writing that down. And from there, then start making top three list, top two list, and then you will finally have your first, that number one curiosity. Now, once you have found out that curiosity, start learning more about that industry and look for a good startup, which I said, a non funded startup. Look for that and join that startup. Now start working over there as an intern. Again, don't worry about too much money, right? Whatever the salary would be, just join and start learning about the processes, how those processes are built, how the founders are doing things. And if you're not able to connect in the first 3, 4, 6 months, quit and join another one right away, right? Don't stick around for several years. Move on. Again, find another founder. Make sure that in that 2, 3 years, you are directly interacting with the founder. There is no HR, there is no head of department, right? There is no sub department. You're directly dealing with the founder. That's very important for you to have your maximized learning. Do that. That's the most important part. Once you have done that, trust me, your journey would be far more easier, as I said, from there. But I would highly recommend you do not start a startup. First, learn as much as possible and make mistakes on other people's money. That's the best way to learn.
Thank you, so thank you for the insights.
No worries.
The next question is from Vanch. Vanch, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, sir. I am Vansh, and I'm asking this question from my hostel. So it's a bit messy here. So sorry for that. Uh, Actually, my question was like I was following your LinkedIn for quite some time, and like I was following your post, and like your post had a lot of content in it and a lot to learn from it. So like my question was, so why are you so much into sharing the content? Like, are you interested in building a personal brand? And does this personal brand affect your company in some way? And if it does, like, should us as a founder, if I am a founder, should I do the same? Should I build a personal brand of content or any strategies that you would recommend?
So look, even if you don't build a personal brand, you're still gonna be able to sell. I did not focus on personal branding for 14 years. I still built multi-million dollar businesses and I sold. Now, the reason why I started working on this content was because we grew to a point where there was a bit of the saturation level that came in, right? Whenever it comes to a bootstrap company, they grow this way. They'll grow, they'll stagnate. They'll grow a little, it will stagnate. They'll grow a little, it will stagnate again. It'll grow a little, it will stagnate, right? Now, to break that barrier, to break that chart, you need to do a little something that's a little different. Now, when it comes to bootstrapping, companies and brands are not humans. They cannot connect to humans. I'm not talking to you today as a founder of PitchGround and First Sales. I'm talking to you as Udit Goenka, right? Now, when I'm doing that, your perspective changes completely. Your way of thought process and connecting with me is very different right away. Now, I could have just asked one of my team member to do this. You won't have connected it that way, right? The reason behind that is human to human connection is what really matters. Now, my ideology has been very firm that I want to give back when I know I have the ability to give back, right? We see a lot of 18 to 19-year-old teenagers Googling the content and turning that into a content and sharing with people without any experience, right? That's not authentic. And that's why when you actually try to work with them, they're clueless. Because having a GAN is one thing and having a practical experience is one thing. I felt finally when I spoke with a good friend of mine, he told me that like you have a lot of good info, you're running good companies, and you can share a lot of these insights that can help others to succeed and grow. And that's when I decided that I'm going to give it a try. And I was trying to look for a right platform that fits to my persona, and that's when I found Twitter. Twitter changed my life completely. I started using Twitter in the mid of September, and just blew up my account. Like I think about like 40,000 people are following me right now on Twitter. Got my account verified. All of this happened in just 8 months. because I was just sharing good quality content and I was not Googling anywhere. I was just sharing insights about how I do things, right? But more importantly, if you might have seen, I share things that did not work for me versus people sharing things that works. The problem is if you see something that's not working, that's a lot better to know rather than knowing the things that will work. Because when you know the things that are not working, it makes your mind more curious to understand and learn. When you see this is working, you won't even use your brain and you will just move on. You will just start reading it. अरे ये काम कर रहा है ना चलो इसी को यूज कर लो और कर लो. That's the difference. And that's when I started pushing more and more and more and more contents. But at the same time, I ensured that the resonates to purely my persona. So to be very honest with you, it takes me just 5 minutes to write one post because I don't have to do any research. I'm running an active company. So I get insights every day. I see my data every day. I run campaigns every day. I see what's working for me and then I share it with everyone. So that's how the my accounts just grew so quickly. I started using LinkedIn only 2 months ago. You might have not seen my contents prior to that even once, right? Again, the sole reason is that again I was able to work on the things that people I understand people are really suffering from. And those are the things I would keep on posting. I would keep on posting. I would keep on posting. And for me, I never run out of insights because when you're running a company, you have new insights every day. So what I did was I turned my company's documentation into contents. So I never fall short of ideas because I keep getting more and more and more questions from people and I turn that into content as well. That's how I do things and that's how I started with this. Now this drastically helped me because I was finally able to start connecting with people as individuals. People started knowing who Udit Goenka is, and that definitely helped out the brands that I am currently operating. So personal brands definitely help you out, but then again, don't focus on personal brand unless and until you exactly know who you are, what you do, and the kind of contents that you will be posting. It needs to be authentic. You need to be real on social media. If you're not going to be real, people will figure out because you might be able to put up the content, but when you start speaking with people on such podcast or webinar, people see who you are and people get right away यार he was bullshit है इसको तो कुछ नहीं आता है ठीक है. People think that way right away. So this is why it's very important to understand when to work on personal branding. So just because everyone is saying personal branding पे काम करो, that doesn't mean you need to work on it. Understand if you really have something that you can share with people that will change their perspective and everything towards what they're doing. Okay? If you have those insights about your own learnings, then go ahead and then start focusing on personal branding. If not, build your company, build your startup. ठीक है, स्विगी के फाउंडर को कोई नहीं जानता है ना, वो फिर भी $14 बिलियन की कंपनी है. ठीक है, जोमेटो का फाउंडर को सब जानते हैं फिर भी $5 बिलियन की कंपनी है अभी. So the point that I'm trying to make is that personal branding does help, but you also need to understand that when to start working on that, basically.
And I
Basically,
believe
you are saying कि you have to build something potential to मतलब इतना कुछ build कर लेना है कि उसको हम brand बना सकते हैं. Like we can't just blatantly make a brand out of Google.
Tell me one person you are following on social media who is not successful. Now tell me honestly.
So like friends को तो follow करते हो.
Keep your friends aside, keep your family aside, right? I'm talking about connecting with other entrepreneurs. Do you connect with entrepreneurs that are not successful? Do you connect with them? Be honest.
Like
That's a no. You're taking so much time. I know the answer is no, right? That's human. There's nothing wrong with it. My circle is of people who are in their 40s, not in their 30s. Because when I want to enter in my 40s, I want to extract more information from them to ensure that my 30s I avoid making those mistakes. And there is nothing wrong. When I was in my 20s, I built my network who were in 20s and I regret that. Now I'm not making those mistakes again. Right? This is why we follow people who are more successful. Why do you think people are following Nitil Kamath and Kunal Shah on social media? Right? The reason behind that is they have more insights than you and I. That's the sole reason, and you want to use that insights for your benefit. So this is why if you don't have something very concrete and valuable to share, you really need to think about it. Just because some freelancer or some influencer is telling that भाई पर्सनल ब्रांडिंग पे फोकस करो बिकॉज पर्सनल ब्रांडिंग जिंदगी बदल देगा, ऐसा नहीं होता है. ठीक है. पर्सनल ब्रांडिंग इज ऑल अबाउट व्हेन you something genuinely have valuable to share. Be it a huge success, be it a failure, something कुछ तो होगा जो आप शेयर करोगे that will help people's life, and that is what makes you an authentic creator. Be authentic. ठीक है. अब मेरे को बोलोगे कि खाने का रेसिपी का वीडियो बनाओ, मैं बोलूंगा भाई रहने दो, मेरे से नहीं होगा. That's not me. Can I create a content like that? Definitely I can. But is that me? No. That's the difference. You need to focus on that difference and then focus on personal branding.
Sir, I have a question. Like, is it good to include family in business decision while going for a friends and family round?
I would say avoid if you can. You can burn bridges. If things go south, you can really burn bridges. So if your family or close family is okay with that, only then involve them or else avoid. You will really sort of end up destroying relationships.
Hi, I have a question. Can I ask?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, hi Uditji. Good to have you here. I've been following you on Twitter and LinkedIn थोड़ा बहुत, and I've been reading your content. And as one said, really insightful content that you put out. Now, talking from point of view of a professional. So what you said in the beginning was you have to focus on a niche and that to cater to a sub niche so that you can build a business around it. Although that I feel, although that is good for a startup and those who have a product, uh, what I personally face a challenge is with defining a niche because as a professional, for example, अब जैसे आप भी finance background से हो, तो अभी finance में, accounting में, strategy में there is a whole lot of business. अगर मैं business को भी cater कर रहा हूँ, traditional भी हो सकते हैं, startup हो सकते हैं, early stage हो सकते हैं, हर type का niche हो सकता है. सो द पॉइंट इज कि हाउ डू आई आइडेंटिफाई दैट निश, क्योंकि हर किसी को मैं अपने अपने सर्विसेज को मॉडिफाई तो कर सकता हूँ ना हर किसी सेगमेंट के लिए. एंड इज इट वर्थ फोकसिंग ऑन अ निश फॉर अ प्रोफेशनल?
Again, I would say focus on niches. Again, the reason behind that is you will grow a lot faster. So, for example, if you end up focusing on being a CA for startups, right? Startup community will start accepting you and start inviting you everywhere. They will start tagging you with regards to any sort of expert advice that's required. And that's how you build a personality and that's how you build an audience. That's why it's very important, and then grow horizontally after that. I'm not saying just focus on that vertical for the rest of your life. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying start with one sub niche, grow and hit to a level where you hit a saturation point. Now, once you've hit that, open up another channel. When you do that way, the kind of recommendations that you would get would be higher. Not only that, you would end up making 3x to 4x more from every single client and customer of yours rather than going and diluting yourself. ठीक है. अब मेरे को एक बात बताओ. ठीक है. if if you're having a heart problem, ठीक है, आप जाके एक जनरलिस्ट को दिखाओगे,
नहीं, फॉर स्पेशलिस्ट को ही दिखाएंगे.
स्पेशलिस्ट को दिखाओगे, एंड स्पेशलिस्ट कितना चार्ज लेता है,
Got it.
right? So they end up making a lot more money. They might have less clients, but they make far more money. And then eventually, such doctors end up owning and operating in hospital. जहाँ पे वो खुद काम नहीं करते हैं, फिर वो अलग अलग डिपार्टमेंट्स बना के दूसरे डॉक्टर्स को हायर करते हैं एंड उसको रन करते हैं, एंड फिर वहां पे वो पैसे कमाते हैं. Make sense? So
Right.
that's why it's very important that you operate things in a very different way because you will end up making a lot more money. So अब जैसे मैं startup ecosystem में बहुत active हूँ, and that's the reason why you see people inviting me, right? Subhanshu reached out to me because of that. Because
Right.
startup ecosystem में people have started knowing me and everyone is contacting me some or the other way. So if I would have not done that, ठीक है, I would have not grown the network. It's as simple as that. So if you're
Mhm.
focusing again, like I said, do not. So what I'm saying is, वर्टिकल आईसीपी स्टार्ट करो, लेकिन उसको जिंदगी भर मत रखो. उसको इवेंचुअली आप हॉरिजॉन्टल ग्रो करो. वंस आपका सैचुरेशन लेवल आ जाएगा, तो वेट फॉर दैट सैचुरेशन टू कम इन फॉर दैट वन सबनीश. बट दुनिया इतनी बड़ी है ना कि आपको एक
Mhm.
वर्टिकल आईसीपी कभी आपको खत्म ही नहीं होगा. दैट इज हाउ
Right.
बिग द इंडस्ट्री इज. So be an expert, don't be a generalist. That's when people start making real money.
Got it. Thanks, sir.
Thank you, sir. I guess we have already taken a lot of time of yours. Eventually, the event started a bit late. Thank you for joining us. It was really great talking with you, and this was a really insightful session. We loved the, we basically it was amazing. I have no words how to describe this session. It was so knowledgeable and insightful. Like we really enjoyed it. Like it was one of the best session we have hosted till now. And thank you for your valuable time. I initially when I contacted you, I didn't even think like you will actually respond back to me. I actually saw your profile and I was like, I'm going to answer on this one. Like if he responds, it's going to be the best event we are going to have. If
respond
he
to
doesn't,
I respond to most of the people, right? Sometimes it go on like so. कभी क्या होता है ना कि if I don't respond, that just means कि I was sleeping and there were 30-40 more people who responded after that, right? That is the only reason. Or else, like I try and ensure that I respond to as many people as possible who are reaching out to me. So, like especially if you end up catching me exactly when I'm online on the app, I end up getting the notification, so I end up replying very quickly at that stage.
thank you, sir. Thank you for your time. And so I guess we won't take further time of yours and we can end the event now. And I would love everyone to drop the review of the event in the event review section. And something really great is coming. We have tried to integrate something really new into our platform, into our server. And so stay tuned and have a good day, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much for the invite, Ashwan. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. It was pleasure
Thank
is
you.
all ours, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, guys.